Hey, this is Bagwell, and guess what? You're listening to the Interactive Interview.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Interactive Wrestling Radio right here on WrestlingEpicenter.com, featuring the Interactive Interview. This week's guest is a guest who last joined us on the Weekend Warriors of Wrestling back in 2006, the U.S. Male, Scotty Riggs. Great interview. If you haven't had a chance to listen to the old interview, I just posted it on YouTube, and you can still hear it in glorious digital audio at WrestlingEpicenter.com and watch the YouTube video there as well. This is the new interview. We didn't go quite as long as last time. Last time was an hour and 47 minutes. This time is an hour and 7 minutes. That's a short interview, I guess. Gotta love Scotty Riggs. Amazing guy, great performer. Never got his just desserts, but truthfully a treasure to talk to. If you get the chance, check him out on Twitter at RealScottyRiggs. Hit him up on Facebook at Scotty Riggs. Be sure and also check out WrestlingEpicenter.com for all your wrestling needs, news, interviews, editorials, and, of course, the store. Buy something, will you?
This is Sting, and you're listening to the Interactive Interview.
This is everybody's favorite superstar, Rob Van Dam. You're catching me on the Interactive Interview. Sweet.
Welcome back to the Interactive Interview right here on WrestlingEpicenter.com. And joining us for the first time in, and I couldn't believe it when I looked it up, in over 6 years, Scotty Riggs is on the phone. Scotty, how you doing?
Doing well. 6 years. God, it didn't seem like it's been that long, but I guess so. Wow.
July 30th, 2006 is when we spent over an hour and a half on the phone with you last time.
God, it doesn't seem like it's been that long ago.
We won't be that long with you tonight.
That, by the way, was one of our best interviews, if I could throw that out there.
Dude, as wacky as everything ever sounds, basically I think because I don't give the regular wrestling interview where it's just a short one sentence or something like that. I tell it like it is. You know, I'm just very real and very honest with people about whatever happened in my life, my career, my persona, everything else, and people seem to enjoy that, whether it's long-winded or get a little off topic or whatever. The fans seem to enjoy it. So it's goofy, but it's good.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, we already mentioned it, but when we talked to you last time, you sounded very raspy, and I actually have your High Spouse shoot interview that you did, and you were pretty raspy then, too. But you sound way more like you did back in the WCW days when you're talking now. What happened? How you doing?
Long story short, at that time, I've been training with a roommate of mine and, you know, doing legs and doing stuff like that. And this is the first time I've done legs since college, and I've actually gotten up to around 270. And so I was carrying a lot of weight. I was so agile and quick and stuff, but I was 270. That was the heaviest I've ever run in my life. About 245 was what it was in WCW. And just found out by doing some blood tests and stuff that I had a thyroid problem. And it was hypothyroidism, and I'm on medication now. And basically, I've gotten down now to around 225 in my weight. And so I just think that, as Terry Taylor actually told me one time at a show in South Carolina, he asked me, dude, have you been gargling with razor blades or what? And I was like, at the time, I just didn't think about it. But I think everything was just carrying so much water weight, retaining water, and everything's why I looked like I was on basically Anadrol. Big show in Dean Malenko. I had gone to see RVD at a show in, it was Jacksonville, Florida, and I walked up to him, and they were like, good God, look how big, you know, and they were like, what? The first thing they said, what are you taking? I'm like, dude, nothing. Little did I know it was my thyroid, basically, that had gone out of whack.
Yeah.
It was just making me retain water, and that was one thing. I noticed I couldn't lose a lot of weight.
Yeah.
So, but I'm healthy now. I've had a few surgeries and had a few injuries on the way from the business and stuff, but everything else is I'm slowly getting back to normal. Just had my gallbladder taken out about 3 months ago. That's back to healthy. You know, just little nicks and things are here that have just finally taking its toll with a little bit of age, finally getting fixed.
Cool. Yeah, we were covering that when you were in the hospital, and it was it sounded like it was pretty scary going there for a little while.
Yeah, I hate talking about health because the minute you talk about it is the minute you jinx yourself and something happens. But, it happened one night, and I've been having some stomach problems with ulcers and stuff like that for a while. It was from taking too much ibuprofen, some things like that, from eating too much red meat and this, that, and the other, all these little, dietary things you're not supposed to overindulge in, I guess. But, yeah, you just condemned me because I do both of those things. Take way too much ibuprofen and eat a lot of meat. Dude, I was taking about, you're only supposed to take like 800 milligrams a day. I was taking like around 3,000 milligrams a day because of my joints and stuff at the time. And like I said, I was carrying around 270 in weight. So you're carrying around some weight, and your ankles, your knees, and you're wrestling, and you're running around, you're doing this, you're doing that. Just had a lot of aches and pains, and I wasn't taking anything else, so it was just a matter of what I was taking, and, I thought for my size it would be something I'd be able to handle.
Right.
But unfortunately, your stomach only held so much of that garbage, but, it's just, just when you sit back for a little while and you have these stomach problems, you have this, and basically when I found out my gallbladder was wrong, one night I was just, everything I was eating, I was throwing up. Everything I was drinking, the minute I drink it, I'd throw it up. So it ended up being rushed to the emergency room, and a guy I actually went to high school with was the ER doctor at the time, stuck a tube down my nose, did every test in the book on me, and did like 2 MRIs, 2 CAT scans, one with contrast, one without, ultrasounds, and that's when they found my gallbladder had like a shadow in it. They didn't know if it was cancerous or not at the time. It did a lot of blood work on me to see if anything was there with that. Basically, they said no, that, it wasn't cancerous, but my gallbladder was basically stopped working, which is why I was having problems eating, digesting food. I was throwing it back. Like I said, everything was coming right back up. So that was not a very comfortable evening and not a very comfortable week that I basically sat in a hospital bed with a tube down my nose trying to get all that stuff figured out. So, but like I said, everything's getting back to being slowly being healthy again. I've actually started, as goofy as this may sound, DDP's been on me for a long time about doing his yoga.
DDP, yeah, yoga for regular guys?
Yeah, well, no, it's actually just DDP yoga now. It's not it's not the yoga for regular guys. He's changed it because he's added a few more things. He just sent me a combo pack, and I've actually started doing it because I've also got 5 herniated discs in my neck and back, and I got, it's called spondylosis. It's kind of like arthritis in your spine.
Oh, Jesus, yeah.
And, well, it's like I said, it's age, it's wear and tear. About 2 months ago, I was talking to Goldberg about it, and I told him I had the MRIs. I've had like 3 or 4 MRIs, and that's what they found with my neck and my, my lower back and stuff. And Bill was like, dude, that's one reason why I don't go to the doctor and get that stuff done. He goes, I have the aches and pains. I just don't want to know what they are. So, and he's been doing a lot of the MMA fighting stuff as a training thing to keep his body loose, keep him in shape, and it's almost like doing the yoga with Paige. It's very little impact. It's better for your joints. And when I told him about my back and the herniated disc, he was like, dude, he goes, this is, my yoga can help you because there's no impact, there's no weights that you're working out with, but you also get almost like a weight training thing out of it.
Exactly.
So, and I've been doing it for about 3 weeks now, and I can tell there's a difference in some of my flexibility and some, and some movements and stuff. But it's just the thing that's going to become a lifestyle. And, I've been able to do a couple of things that Paige has sent me already, and there's still a few others I got to gradually just grow into, and just strengthen a few things up, the joints and stuff like that. It's people go, oh, wrestling is fake and stuff like that.
I was about to say that.
Well, wrestling is not fake. Wrestling is a very athletic endeavor with the entertainment side to it. Now, maybe what you see today with like WWE and sports entertainment is a little more fake because you know, they do load up on stuff for pay-per-views or maybe Raw, but with their tape shows and with their house shows, and other guys pretty much just, from what I hear, if you go to a WWE house show, it's pretty much like going to watch two cardboard cutouts, you know, slap each other around.
You think so?
You know, it's very little impact. You know, they work on a few moves, do a few of their spots, get the crowds happy, and then they leave, go on, boom, and they don't do anything. I still remember a lot of times WCW, and I was in the flock, and Raven, when he got hurt and got sick with his pancreatitis, I had to work Benoit on a lot of the house shows.
Yes, sir.
So I worked in Benoit on 3 house shows in a row with the chops that he gives you and the pinpoint accuracy that he has with his chops. Dude, I mean, I was blistered up. I was, my chest was swollen. I had a one handprint basically because it's like he hits the same spot every time, you know. And I love Chris to death, and I missed him, man. But it's just like, you know, God, Chris, can you take one break and not chop me so much? And the funny fact is, I actually have one match. It was on the Nitro in Philly where, basically, long story short, he took his chops out on Lodi.
Yep.
Lodi got a little bit of an ego, and he chopped Lodi about 6-7 times before I could actually pull him off of Lodi and get back to beating him up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how we kind of set up the heat spot. But I think I'm the only guy who had a match with Chris that did not get chopped by him.
That's true.
And that was that one match right there.
That's true. And I got to tell you, I could tell that you have a lot of pride in that match because I've seen you post it a couple times on your Facebook. And
dude, any match I had with Chris, whether it was the Saturday night one, whether it was the Nitro ones, or any the Thunder or anything like that, I took a lot of pride in those matches because the one thing that Chris brought out of me was that intensity. It takes very few guys brought that intensity to a match. A lot of guys want to bring their character. They want to bring, the ease. Arn Anderson was a great guy to work with, but he was like working a feather. You barely knew some of his unbelievable. He was hitting you, but he was so solid when he did. You couldn't, you didn't see through it, but he was so good at what he did. You didn't feel it. So you relaxed a little bit with some guys. Chris, you couldn't relax. So the matches, it was just like being in college football again.
Exactly.
Just a lot of intensity. There's a lot of contact, and that I love that part about it.
Very cool. Very cool. Now you mentioned a couple things about WCW and ECW, and at the time when we talked last, it seemed like you were getting a lot of notoriety for your time in ECW, which was much shorter than your time in WCW. Do you find today that people come up to you and say, yeah, I remember you in WCW, or do you think that people remember you still at the time, as you were in 2006, getting recognized more for your time in ECW?
Well, the goofy thing is I've actually been on Twitter a lot, and, that's a pretty new social media thing, so I'm getting to know fans that, as goofy as it sounds, they remember the American Males and that music.
Yeah.
As hideous as it is, they remember it as a classic. They actually loved it, and I found out there's a lot more American Male fans out there still, a lot of Flock fans, but I think the one thing that made me stand out in ECW was working the program with my feud with RVD. Mm-hmm. He says he was their top-level guy, the number one dude, and we never been friends since '92 for real life, and, it's just, so when it comes to remembering me for what I did, I got to work with Tommy Dreamer, another one with Steve Corino, with Jerry Lynn, just a lot of the top-name guys that were in ECW at the time. Mm-hmm. And, that's almost like saying I wrestled Sting every match, or I wrestled Ric Flair every match, or I wrestled, Luger or those guys in WCW. It was the same culmination in a sense, but in ECW I was more in the upper level.
Right.
Than I was in WCW. So that's why a lot of people remember my ECW just a little bit more. Even though it was, like you said, a shorter run.
It was a much shorter run, but you were in WCW for what, 4 or 5 years, and
I actually was in WCW from about 93.
93, yeah, I remember that.
Until 95.
Mm-hmm.
And basically by Arn Anderson's telling me to do so. Arn Anderson pulled me aside. It was before Thanksgiving in '94. Arn pulled me aside, and he gave me the best advice I ever had in my career. He told me, you need to leave WCW. Really? I said, what? Yeah, Arn. I'm looking at Arn, and we were at Center Stage in Atlanta getting ready for a TV tape, and he pulled me aside. He goes, Scotty, you got a great attitude. You got a great look. Your abilities, is out there. He goes, but right now, Dusty Rhodes is losing his oomph in the company. Eric Bischoff is about to take over, and you're going to get stuck under a glass ceiling unless you leave here, because you need to go. Because I don't know where you can go or what you can do, but you need to get out of here and do something to let these people forget about you a little bit. And I'm sure you'll be back if you don't get a break maybe in WWE or WWF at the time. But I was a little bit in shock that Arn wanted me to leave, but I looked at it and I was like, he's not like he's, degrading me. He's building me up, and he's not blowing smoke. And so I just kind of sat back and thought about it, and the next thing I know, I was working that Thanksgiving show in Warner Robins with Jake the Snake Roberts, and Jerry Lawler was there. And to make this short, Jerry got me into USWA in January of '95. So from mid-January of '95 to about mid-August of '95, I was in USWA.
Yeah. I have. I've seen that stuff, yeah. I actually have the entire 1995 USWA TV collection on DVDs. Yeah, I did see that stuff, and that was.
If I say I had my first match, it was January 14th of '95 against, I think it's Phil Hickerson, or one of the Hickerson guys, Jesse Hickerson, some of that sort. And they said I had it was one of the best debut matches they ever had from somebody in USWA. But it gave me a chance to spread my wings, to learn the business, to learn the sport, to wrestle 6 nights a week, and to travel every night pretty much. Mm-hmm. So that was a great time there. And then when I got my shot to come back into WCW as Bagwell's partner, I was prepared.
Yeah.
It just, it got me ready. And that's one of the things that guys are lacking nowadays. I get a lot of questions about, like, a guy named Zack Ryder.
Zack Ryder.
I don't know the guy, but he's got potential when it comes to maybe a character or something. He stepped out of the box and put himself on the YouTube station or whatever, doing his Long Island ICD show or whatever. So he got himself out there social media-wise. And so off of that, WWE is going, hey, we got something with a little bit of viability here that's going to help us out, and it's something that they were branching out into themselves with their social media. So they're giving the guy a rub, they're giving him a push. John Cena's buddy, and whatever, stuff like that, and says, but he's still getting killed basically in wrestling matches because you can look at him, he looks robotic. He's not gaining the experience he needs. He's maybe getting 2-3 matches a week at that. And most of them are TV matches, so he's not really getting to gain the experience and exposure in the ring and get rust off and get, practice things and do things. So there's a lot of guys that are lacking that nowadays. And I was blessed to be able to go to USWA. I got very lucky to meet Lawler and get that chance here, and it prepared me from 95 till 2000. I was in WCW and got my good rubs in the Flock and American Males and everything else that I did there.
Yeah.
Which prepared me to go to ECW and actually be elevated a little bit higher because Paul Heyman saw a lot more in me than, at the time, Vince Russo had come into WCW.
Right, I was just about to ask you, yeah. Because they had...
What Bischoff, it was basically Russo and those guys when they were bringing in Jeff Jarrett and a lot more of the girl action and all this stuff. And I was actually, in a sense, glad to be out of there because that was really the downfall of WCW. And it was just good to be out of that and walk on eggshells all the time, never know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And I just wasn't Russo's cup of tea, I guess, when it came to being a character or, he was so comic book oriented in what he wanted wrestlers to be. Everybody had to be a persona or goofy something this or, I just didn't like it.
The last real run that you had there, I think, was actually before Russo came in, and I think in our last interview you described it as they gave you a mirror and they said, here, be buff but not. And, you know,
well, they wanted me to go back to being a pretty boy again after, you know, went from the American males where we were so pretty and everything 80s pretty much, you know, when it came to being a white, you know, white bread baby face.
Right,
you know, all 80s. Even though it was the mid-90s. And then when I went to the Flock, went to that with the eye patch, complete grunge look, complete dark image. And, you know, I actually love that. And that's everything I was planning to keep the eye patch and everything after we split from the Flock, but do more of a Snake Plissken look, where it's going to be kind of a, you know, just more of, not really, I wouldn't say a fighter, but more of a just keeping that dark edge to it, but getting rid of the grunge look.
Yeah.
And Terry Taylor was like, no, and Kevin Nash was like, no, we want you to go back being more of a egotistical pretty boy again, instead of being under the eye patch and everything else. We want you to drop that whole thing. I'm like, dude, I mean, I've already brought this to you, and Terry Taylor looked at it and says, I like how good, it's good, but it's not you anymore. I was like, you got to, no, we want you to do this, where you're going to become an egotist. I just said, well, you know, I didn't like it, but they didn't give me a whole lot of options, basically. I mean, they gave me a decent little rub at the start of it,
right?
And then they went completely just, you know, and I actually ditched the mirror towards the end of it because, you know, they weren't doing anything with it, so I said, I'm not doing anything with it either.
There you go.
So, hey,
well, I want to go back to something that you said about guys getting the experience. Do you think that the lack of the territories or the depth of the territories is what has caused that? Guys not getting the proper experience needed.
Definitely. I mean, back when I was growing up watching wrestling, you had you had Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling, you had Georgia Championship Wrestling, you had Florida Wrestling, you had California, you had everything. And one thing that guys got better is you would see Ric Flair in the Mid-Atlantic, you would see him in Georgia, you would hear about him in Florida, you would hear about him in California, Texas with the Von Erichs, you know, and he traveled everywhere and got better to where he could carry a company as NWA World Heavyweight Champion. You know, there's guys out there now who are world champions, and, you know, CM Punk got to where he's at. And if you watch his matches, he is one of the technically gifted wrestlers around. He's not a big guy. Doesn't need to be. And he's done great on the mic, which has made him better as a persona. But he's one of him and Daniel Bryant are some of the best wrestlers out there because they spent time making their craft better, making their abilities better, making their techniques better that you couldn't see to what they're doing. You know, they're suspending that disbelief that this ain't real, but God, you see what they're doing? You know, they learned that craft of drawing you in there, and working with a guy like Chris Jericho did the same thing, wrestling Japan, Mexico, Canada, all over the United States, ECW, WCW, then WWE. He was the first unified heavyweight champion when he beat Rock and Austin in the same night. So there was a guy who spent years toiling to make his craft better. Here you get these guys who spend maybe 6 months, 8 months, and OVW or FCW, and then they get called up to the main thing after a few years in the business, and boom, you know, they get shoved on TV with a character that's not even them. They're all playing roles now.
Yeah.
You know, that Damien Sandow guy, I wonder if he's really, you know, I hate to mention names or stuff like that, but you look at a guy who has that type of character, is that really him? Or is he playing a role?
Exactly.
You know, you look at CM Punk, and that's been him for years. Through Ring of Honor, through TNA, through everything he did to get to where he's at. You know, but he's carried the same image. RVD was the same way. When he started off as RVD, that was in 92, 93, and he started off as Rob Zukowski's real name in USWA back then in 92, but when he did the RVD thing, he did it in Japan, he did it in the Indies forever, did it in ECW, then he was RVD and WCW for a little bit, but he still was crafting his moves, his persona. Then he got his big run in ECW. Then he got a great run at WWE. Now he's had a solid run in TNA.
Right.
But the thing is they hone their craft, and then they're ready.
The
Nowadays,
thing is,
these guys are just getting shoved at you, and you got to go, wow, nothing.
When I interviewed Sherry Martel back in 2004,
I love Sherry.
She made this point, and she kind of painted a picture where the wrestlers were, Vince comes up to them and says, okay, we want you to act like this, and he showed them how to walk and how to talk, and ever since she said that, I've kind of looked at it with that in mind, and you could see it in so many of the characters that it's really just a branch of Vince himself out there, and it's not necessarily them at all, and like you said, it's the ones we remember are the ones that are able to go out there and bring some level of themselves to it, even if it's blown up, a version of themselves to it.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Well, again, CM Punk.
Look at guys like Chris Benoit, Eddie Guerrero, Chris Jericho, The Rock, Steve Austin, Shawn Michaels, all those guys who just tops the wrestling business, all basically were basically who they were, outside the ring. Just in the ring, they turned it up tenfold, 100-fold, and that's why they were so great at what they did.
Yep.
Sting was the same way. Sting was, one of the, actually, when we played golf and stuff and traveled together, he was a very, very energetic guy all the time. And that, when he went up to the ring, he was one of the most, goofy, energetic guys you've ever been around.
It's amazing that he's still as good as he is. I mean, he's still one of the best performers out there.
Oh, God, yeah. I mean, and the thing is he's solid at wrestling. He's solid at getting on the mic, and that was the one thing that Flair taught him, how to be better at promos, how to be good at speaking, how to be relaxed at speaking out there. And Flair was one of the greatest at promos. Hogan was great at promos. Hogan couldn't wrestle a lick, but God, he was great at promos. Mm-hmm. And that's, that extension of your personality gets you over with the fans. Raven.
You mentioned that. I've just got this picture of Sting playing golf, and it's hilarious because he's got I picture him with the flat top and the face paint playing golf, and it's a pretty funny image.
Well, he didn't have a face paint, but at first he had the flat top. Then he grew out the long hair, and he actually got the idea to grow out the long hair from me. He used to be like, dude, I've been dyeing my hair so long, it's killing my hair, and I'm about to go bald, but I'm going to let, basically let it grow out and get to a natural color again and stop killing my hair. And then he grew it out long because in that mid-'90s stage and late 90s, everything was long hair. Every one of the wrestlers was long hair. Now they're going back to short hair. And the one thing that was great about long hair is you could sell a punch a whole lot easier because you had your hair blocking the view of the fans. It just went with with your body language. If you have your hair to whip back, people go, wow, and they just added to the image. The guy up in the front row might see the punch be missed, but the guy up in the rafters is seeing your hair fly and going, God, that punch is looking great from up here. So it's just, it added to the image.
Yeah.
So.
Shortly, well, not shortly, actually, about 3 years after we did the interview with you, I was searching on MySpace while working one late night, and I came across Harry Slash of the Slash Tones, and I tried to get that CD for you, but as it turns out, you ended up getting the song anyway prior to it. But
yeah, Harry sent me a couple. He actually sent me 2 copies of it just in case.
Good. He was an awesome guest. I guess you've been blessed with 2 great theme songs. Which was your favorite? Was it the Clap or was it American Males?
I'm actually going to have to say the Clap was actually my favorite song for 2 reasons. One, the American Males was good, but that was a tag team. That was me and Bagwell. And Bagwell was actually happy that, because he came out, when he came out with Scorpio, they used Scorpio's music.
Right.
When he came out with Patriots, the Red, White, and Blue, they used the Patriots music. Yeah. When he came out with Alex Wright, I don't know what music they used when him and Alex tried to be a tag team, but again, it wasn't really for him, And then finally, the American Males music was his first thing that was a music that was devoted to the tag team that he was identified with. Mm-hmm. And it he was like, I finally got my own music. Mm-hmm. Until he got his Buff Daddy.
Yep.
But for me, again, like the Clap, that was actually just when Paul Heyman gave me the whole scoop about how we were going to do the Clap, everything else. They got a parody of the American Males thing. It's going to give something that identifies the fans can identify with you, and if they do it, great. If they don't, even better. The funny thing is, if you ever watch an ECW show, some of the fans were doing the clap, but they were shooting birds the way they were doing it.
Yeah.
I used to love that, because that way they were still doing it, but they were flipping a bird at me too. But it gave us, and it goes, the thing is, it gives you a persona that people know and they can identify with, but then your wrestling takes over. So the funny thing was, I would go out to the ring doing the clap, and Rhino actually gave me a great compliment one time. He goes, dude, I don't see how you do that. He goes, but you make it look so cool that if people aren't doing it, they're just not cool. He goes, I couldn't do something like that. He goes, but you were so confident in how you got there and did it. He goes, it's unreal. I said, man, to me, it's the goofiest thing I'm doing, but it just identifies, and it's something I can play with.
Yeah.
And then as soon as I get to the ring, I can get business-like. But if it's so funny, you know, the ECW crowd, and it was in the Hammerstein Ballroom, I wrestled with Van Dam, and that's a New York City crowd.
Yes, sir.
You know, very, very hardcore. Go out there, and you walk out, and I remember standing at the entrance thing. They cranked up my music. I was wrestling RVD that night, and the crowd knew it was the second night we were there. And Heyman is standing in his gorilla position to get ready to tell me to go out, and I kind of looked through the crowd, and the audience, I said a good 60 to 70% of them were doing the clap. I said, Paul, look at this. He looked at it, looked back at me, he goes, I told you. And I just kind of grinned, and that made me grin a little bit more when I went out the entrance. And as soon as they cut the music and I stopped doing the clap, the people started booing the crap out of me.
Yeah.
Here they were clapping that, 7 out of 10 people were doing the clap. And then at the end of it, they were booing me, which is a heel is what you want. If you're a bad guy, I want to be booed. The fact that they were doing the clap, hey, that was ketchup and mustard. That was gravy.
Yeah.
But the fact that they started booing me right after the music ended, and then when Van Dam's music cranked up, I was like, great, they don't like me. That's what I wanted.
Good.
But it was cool to have my own song. I was very, very grateful for Harry Slash. Actually, the funny thing is, if you ever get to the end of the song, and it's on my copies, there's a little thing where I'm trying to remember how it goes. It's like something Elvis, and in the Elvis voice it goes, ha, give me a volume. and you just kind of pop on it. You laugh at it because it's the last thing you hear in the song. A lot of times on the intro you don't hear that, but on the CD that Harry sent me, in the Elvis voice, you're like, ha, give me a volume.
Yeah, he used to like to throw little nuggets in there.
Exactly.
Yeah, he was great. Basically, I just want to talk to you a little bit. I'm going to let you go soon because I told you I wasn't going to keep you that long tonight, and I appreciate your time. I guess my question is, I saw that you were going to Japan earlier this year. Obviously, that was around the health scare time. What's the plan for in-ring action? Are you going to keep going on? And, what's your aspirations? Obviously, you mentioned RVD, the guy who I can't imagine taking that Van Terminator, but you took it from him. You have any goals of going to TNA anymore, or are you happy with what you're doing? Or?
Well, I'm pretty much happy with what I'm doing right now. Taking everything, like I said, with some of the injuries and the surgery that I had. And I've had 2 hernia surgeries, getting the hernias I had fixed. I've had the gallbladder surgery, and just with the disc and everything else. There comes a time when you just got to sit back and, I fractured my elbow about a year after we spoke, and I've had 3 surgeries where they pretty much sliced my elbow open with about a 8 to 12 inch cut. It's almost like filleting a fish. If you ever seen a fish fillet from gullet to tail,
yeah.
Pretty much what they did to my elbow. They had to put 13 screws, 2 steel plates in there to fix a fractured on the bone, where the doctor basically told me he had to find the bone in my muscle. And again, I was weighing 270 at this time. And everybody, I had Scott Steiner arms, not as ripped, but big arms that people were like, good grief, and, it just came from doing curls with 155.
Right.
That's how freakishly strong I was getting at the time, and big I was getting because I was just doing stuff that, I was clean as a whistle and healthy, and I think that's why just the guy I was training with, he was a freak of nature in his workouts. So he pushed me to a limit that some of the guys in the past used to do, like Lex and Sting when I was training with those guys, would push you to a limit and make you better.
Right.
But I was doing a lot more cardio then, too, and didn't have the thyroid problem.
Yep.
But just with that injury, some of the things that, age with the wear and tear, pretty much, going on the more the semi-retired side, pretty much retired side of actually in-ring activity. It's just, my body's just taking a toll on it. And again, that's why I go wrestling. The wrestling I did was a lot more real than the entertainment that the guys are doing today.
Oh, yeah.
The TNA guys, those guys are really, they've upped it a notch since they went live and they're wrestling. You can tell, that they're really promoting wrestling like they used to, and it just garnered them a lot better viewing audience. They're not doing the gaga. I still look at WWE and go, why in the world did you add an hour to Raw when basically that 45 minutes of that hour are replays? In the second and third hour, they're basically replaying what happened in the first hour because they don't expect you to tune in the first hour anymore.
Well, it's very reminiscent of WCW, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But the point was, when WCW was doing it, they were pretty much still mixing, 4 matches per hour.
Triple H has this weird thing. Triple H has this weird thing of liking ridiculously long segments. I remember one time he did this thing where he turned on Flair and he proceeded to beat on him with a sledgehammer for 3 segments. 3 segments of beating on Flair with a sledgehammer, and it's like, dude, I got the point the first time you hit him. But if he's involved in the writing process and things, instead of getting more things on the show, we're getting the same amount of things stretched out longer, and it's just painful.
Oh, yeah. When they ended the deal, I guess it was about 2 weeks ago. So it was one before SummerSlam where Brock beat up Shawn Michaels.
Yeah.
What you basically ended a show with 12 to 15,000 people. How many people were in that arena that time? I don't know whether they inflate their numbers, but it's like we used to, but WCW did at one point, but then towards the end of it, or when Nitro really took off, we didn't inflate nothing. They was sold out arenas for Nitro that the hard gamer side was filled with people. But, long story short, you're sitting there with all these people there waiting for a match to happen, and they're showing you on their big Titantron what's going on in the parking lot. And then they have, Brock carry Shawn out. They're taking all this time to come from the back of Brock carrying Shawn to the ring, pushing him in the ring. Brock slowly gets in the ring, then locks it. And you're sitting there going, you're going off the air with this? Not even in-ring stuff, but something that happened outside. You had to bring it inside, and that's how you go off the air.
Wow.
Well, my question was, why didn't he F5 him?
The reason.
Sorry.
Say that again?
I was going to say, well, my question was, and again, going back to what James said about them stretching the segment out for, forever, for like half an hour, why didn't he attack Shawn when they were in the ring the first time?
Exactly. Well, they wanted to end the show with it. So why don't, thing is, why build up the idea of, okay, the 10 o'clock hour, we have Shawn in the ring and have Brock go, well, I'm going to get you before then. And then, it'd take an hour for Shawn to leave the building, and then for him to jump him and stuff, and then end the show on that. Why don't you just, have Shawn come out there after a solid, match, by Punk and those guys, and then go, saying the things you were saying, and then have, him go out there and then have Brock, like you said, jump him then. That would bring, bring Triple H out, and they could do the same segment without having to do all the gaga. And that way the people in the ring, in the audience, would be going, this is happening right now in front of us. Yes, the wrestling fan is smart going, they taped that earlier. That's not happening live,
And it was, and even if it was, it just was awkward. I do have one last question, and you had your health issues, and your former tag partner Buff has had his own, with broken neck and all that in the past couple months, and recent arrests and things. What's your relationship like with Buff now?
Let me say one thing. About that accident that Mark had. Buff, it actually got me and him back in touch. We still keep in touch every now and then with a text or a call, but just during that time, we actually talked to each other numerous times. And one thing, he had a slight fracture in his neck, but he basically broke his face in the wreck and had to have 2 surgeries on his face to basically repair his cheekbone, his jaw, put some teeth back in. That was a major accident, that part of that. And he didn't have a recent arrest. What happened with that was if you're in a one-car accident, they're going to basically hit you with reckless driving.
Oh.
And the fact that he was in the hospital, they put him in, they induced a coma on him so he could heal for a couple days. They brought him out of the coma. They let him heal in the ICU. He was in a neck collar. He was, had some busted up ribs, and, his face was busted up. He then had the facial surgery. And then after maybe a week, 10 days in the hospital, he went home.
Wow.
And then he had one other final surgery while he was still, but he could convalesce at home. And basically after a few weeks, the sheriff's department, he was supposed to go turn himself in for the reckless driving. So basically he was supposed to turn himself in, but he wasn't healthy enough to leave the house yet and go in. And long story short, the sheriff's department came and got him. And then it came out as a separate story that, he gotten caught for reckless driving. So that made everybody think, okay, he was probably on pain medication and got busted for that, or he was on this, got busted, whatever it was.
In reality, with the original
Everybody
crash,
thought there was a separate issue that he gotten busted for. Long story short, it was all in tandem with the accident. He didn't go turn himself in on it. He was supposed to, so the sheriff's department came and got him. And that's why everything made it like it was a separate issue. It wasn't. And all he had to do was go down, get booked, post bail. He was out. He wasn't even in a jail cell.
Wow.
He already knew what his bail was supposed to be. He just had to go down and get booked and then get released.
Wow.
It's just like getting a ticket and then having somebody come get you, get you out of jail and whatever. If you have to spend a couple hours to get out of there or whatever. It wasn't that big of a thing. It was just a legal process you had to go through.
Absolutely.
So hopefully that'll clear that up for you, and when people either listen to this interview, whatever, that clears that in their mind for them, because it's coming from his mouth to my ears, and my mouth to your ears.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's not a tale. It's not a whatever. It's fact.
Cool.
Look it up in whatever public records you want to, and see it's fact.
Yeah.
So
final question I have for you, then I'll let Pat ask. You mentioned MMA in passing during this interview, and I see that you're very interested in it. And a couple of our guests in the past have said that MMA basically stole the old-style logic of wrestling, which is 2 guys are going to fight. Do you think that they did borrow from what wrestling once was? And do you think that maybe light bulbs will go off anywhere and say, hey, if people liked what wrestling once was and simulated sport and all that kind of stuff, maybe we can get back a little bit away from the cardboard stuff, like you say, we're seeing on Raw, which I think we're all in agreement on, and maybe get back towards a more sports-style feel to a wrestling show.
Yeah, I thoroughly agree with that. That MMA kind of said, hey, if we're going to go get from the ECW style, the hardcore underground being viewed, to more of a mainstream publicity where we can keep everything kind of with the edge to it, but put the glitz and glamour and put ourselves in these big 30,000-seat arenas and on pay-per-view and everything else. Oh, yeah, Dana White's a smart businessman. He knows how to make money, and then have everybody with nicknames, John Bones Jones or Dan Hendo Henderson, the Iceman, Chuck Liddell, all those guys. They all had a persona, Downton Beach Bad Boy, Tito Ortiz, the American Psycho, Stephen Bonner. So every one of them gets a little bit of a identity. Chael Sonnen is a huge wrestling fan. You know, that's where he's getting his gift of gab, like Muhammad Ali stole from Gorgeous George. You know, and turned it, you know, in boxing, he became this larger-than-life talker. You know, going against Smoking Joe Frazier, who was a very quiet guy but was a killer in the boxing ring. But Muhammad Ali knew how to talk to him.
Yep.
And you can look it up where Muhammad Ali was the whole fight was going, you know, to Frazier. We're getting paid $1 million a piece to do this fight. You know, the whole time they were boxing. Muhammad Ali's talking to him.
Yep.
And, you know, Joe Frazier was sitting there chewing on his mouthpiece, just wanting to box. So, Dana White's definitely, you know, taken the glitz, the glamour, brought it to UFC, brought UFC out of the gutter, cleaned it up, put some rules to it. But it's still, when you see the guys competing, whether they're grappling, the fans are watching. It's like wrestling in Japan. Japan is still that sport where I still remember the first tour I did over there. I did it with Chris Jericho, with Scott Norton, Bagwell, and myself. There was one night where me and Jericho tagged against Jushin Liger and El Samurai. And I can't remember what city it was, but we were just somewhere outside of Tokyo. And then we went over to Sapporo, which is another island. We had to fly over there. And over there, I wrestled against Chris Jericho. Then the next night on the island over there, I was back in a 6-man tag with Jericho. So there was one night you were going to be a tag team. One night you could wrestle against the guy you just tagged with. The next, and it made everything in Japan seem like it's all a sport, a competition of who's going to get the victory.
Yep.
That's what MMA with UFC, with Strikeforce, with Bellator, they're all doing that. And Bellator is attaching itself to TNA because of Spike TV. So they're attaching themselves there to TNA where they're trying to get the cross promotion. And that there's supposed to be some MMA fighter that's actually starting to go into pro wrestling. King Mo, some of that.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of a crossover in that where they're going to try to bring that believability. Brock Lesnar brought back, you know, with the Kimura lock and stuff, it's just a hammer lock, but it's a shoot move. You know, if you look at a rear naked choke, it looks like the sleeper that Johnny Weaver did back in the 70s that people believed to put you to sleep.
Yes.
The 80s and 90s that people would see you put a sleeper on somebody, they go, oh, boo. They knew you weren't really hurting the guy, but they didn't believe it could hurt the guy. Now they see a guy go limp dish rag, pass out, boom, from a front face lock like John Bones Jones did to Machida. Just did a front face lock, but basically did it right, where, you know, every wrestling move you see can break a bone, make somebody pass out, snap a knee, whatever. You know, some to the eye can be an eye out. Whatever it is, you know, there's that real reality to it. That's what makes UFC and MMA so attractive to people now. It's just bringing reality back to a combat sport in a sense. That's what wrestling used to be seen like.
And I know, you know, I'm a wrestling fan. I got to be honest, I don't get the MMA, but what I could say is this, you know, I've gone to everywhere from
the ropes.
What's that again?
It's because there's no ropes for them to run into.
Yeah, that's what I'm sure.
Yeah, you don't see too many guys throwing drop kicks except for that one guy that fought Frankie Edgar the last time where he did a head kick by jumping into the cage. I can't remember his name, Benson Henderson or something like that.
Yeah.
And did a kick to the guy's head by jumping into the cage first. That was the first time somebody did that, and everybody went, wow, you know. So
there you go. But yeah, no, I don't get it. But I'll tell you what. Anytime I wear a wrestling T-shirt out of any kind, if I break out an old Nitro shirt or something, the thing I'll get told by everybody, no matter what I do, if I go to Subway, if I go to a sporting event and somebody sees me in a wrestling shirt, they'll say, "Oh, I used to love wrestling. I watch MMA now." It's the same thing from everybody. So hopefully somebody will put two and two together and just bring back the simple logic of it all, and we'll get it.
Well, again, that's where you see guys like, you know, with Ed SummerSlam. There's only two matches that I cared about, and one opened the show and one ended the show with Jericho wrestling Ziggler. They put on a wrestling clinic from what I heard. I mean, I didn't see it, but
their Raw match was actually better.
You know, I saw their Raw match, but I'm still saying they put on a wrestling clinic. And then at the end of the show, you had the big fight of Lesnar and Hunter. everybody, they open the show with something believable. The end of the show was something believable. Everything in the middle was fluff. You know, there was nothing that nobody cared about. Del Rio against Sheamus again.
Yeah, nobody cares.
Triple threat for the title with Cena, Big Show, and Punk again. You know, Kane and Daniel Bryan again. Yeah. You know, you just sat back and went, wow, again. You know, but they didn't do anything to separate everything they've just seen. So, but they opened the show and the end of the show was something believable. So they got the crowd wired. Then the crowd went out for popcorn. Then the crowd came back and left going crazy. You know, so that they knew what they were doing that way with it. But the thing is, wrestling doesn't have many viable, believable guys anymore. TNA is getting better with like Kurt Angle and Devon. Dudley has gotten in great shape, and Bubba Ray has gotten in great shape, and one's a face, and the Dudley boys, one's a face, one's a heel. Yeah. But they've gotten so great in their working abilities. Bobby Roode, James Storm.
Bobby Roode is awesome.
Partners. I mean, Bobby Roode he is a net factor. He's got that, and
he reminds me so much of Rick Rude. It's not even funny, and that's not an insult.
No, not at all. That's.
And Ziggler.
Bully Ray has really shocked me at how good he is as a singles guy.
He went from a guy that stuttered in ECW to a guy who cuts a strong, believable promo now.
Yeah.
And all those guys in TNA have all basically, Austin Aries is one of the greatest workers I've seen in a long time, and he reminds me of Dean Malenko.
He does. That's a good call, yeah.
And just that fact there, every one of those top guys that you see in TNA right now have all basically cut their teeth. They've all bloodied their nose and spent time making their craft of wrestling.
Yep.
Great. And that's why their show is doing so good now, and people are believing what they're doing again. They're suspending that disbelief. Well, if you look at what WWE is doing, they're going to give you 1 or 2 matches out of a 3-hour show that have credibility to it.
Well, the final question that I have for you, and we talked about this a little bit, but we talked about MMA borrowing elements from the old school professional wrestling. But I watched the Strikeforce show on Saturday night, and I really enjoyed it. But there were certain elements of it, like them keeping track of the stacks and how many hits and takedowns and submissions that all the guys went for, and they would post them after the fight, like immediately after the fight was over. And I thought that was really fascinating. And I just sat there thinking, I'd like to see things like that incorporated into professional wrestling. I think that would be cool if they actually kept track of those kind of things. Do you think that wrestling should borrow those kind of elements from MMA?
No, not a bit. The only reason that they keep those stats, punches and takedowns and strikes and things of that sort is basically because there's 3 judges. They do things by rounds, so they got to have those stats in the sense for judges to look at a stat thing or something like that and go, okay, maybe here's octagon control, here's this, here's that. There are certain things that they keep on those fighters that judges end up looking for in scoring their rounds, 10-9, 10-8, where points are deducted or whatever. So that works for MMA because it's rounds and it's done by judges if you don't get a KO or a submission. Wrestling, you don't have a judge. You have a referee who's, doing an entertainment aspect of a finish or a finale, of an ending to a match. So keeping a punch count or keeping grappling control, it doesn't really happen, in wrestling, in pro wrestling. It's again, that's where it's the entertainment aspect of it. If you actually sat back and watched and saw punches and everything else and tried to do a punch count in a match, you're going to end up with, you got to count chair shots too. How many chair shots did you have that match? 17 chair shots. Even when I saw The Rock hit Mankind with about 8 chair shots while he had his handcuffs behind his back, you're sitting back going, my God, split his head open, and they showed him one thing, I can't remember if it was Beyond the Mat or whatever it was with what they showed with Mick, but his head was split open after all those chair shots because Mick was going head first, cracked me with him because that's the way Mick was. But what are you going to, if you have 5 chair shots and the guy doesn't have a bump on his head, a gash, or doesn't need stitches, or doesn't have concussion problems, or whatever, it just, the next thing you know, they're going to have, it doesn't correlate. I'm basically what I'm saying. Nice concept, but doesn't correlate. It doesn't work because there's too many XYZ factors in wrestling when you only have A, B factors in MMA.
Yes. Okay, that's a great answer.
I mean, does that honestly answer it for you? Because again,
sure, absolutely. I like to think about these things when I watch MMA and wrestling, because I watch both quite a bit, especially recently. So I always think about all the things that they could do the same, and things that where do you draw the line at making them different and keeping them separate, and where do you keep them similar?
Well, again, I look back and when I used to talk to Ricky Steamboat about some of the stuff that he did to make his wrestling look more believable, he would actually watch boxing matches. He would study how guys took punches, whether it was a body shot, whether it was uppercuts, whether it was a straight hand, into how he sold if somebody punched him. If Flair punched him right in the nose, how he would sell it with facial expression and body language. If he got hit, yes, but that's what he did to get so much better. He actually did that stuff, and I was like, I actually said the same thing. Wow, I never thought of it like that way. Yeah. So there's certain aspects you can do to study stuff to make yourself better. I looked at it, there's a few guys that do the MMA stuff. Like I give Del Rio credit for having at least a decent finish with that armbar. The only thing is he's got to work it a way where a guy can fight the armbar too. He doesn't go straight into it. That's where he hadn't studied the use of his own finish. He's got to have ways where somebody, you can grip your hands and fight, where he's got to go into getting that finish, fighting for it, and then when he gets it, then it means something. In fact, you go straight into it every time, it's like, blah. It takes away from it. So it's a matter of just being creative enough in your own craft and taking pride in your own craft. And you look at the guys who've taken pride in it. It's the guys who have toiled in their careers to make their careers great. A lot of these guys just appear out of nowhere, and all of a sudden they make them somebody. And that's just a shame of it all. Some of these guys, and they're all talented, they all look good, and they're all pretty. I'm not talking about the divas, I'm talking about the guys. The Miz is not going to get his face punched or his nose broke because he wants to do movies. He comes from a reality TV show background where he's a wrestling fan and got into wrestling because of that. He still wants, the only reason he's doing it is because he wants to be a superstar. He doesn't want to be wrestlers anymore. Yeah. And that's the shame of it all. The TNA guys, they don't mind a black eye, a knocked out tooth, or a concussion every now and then, or a broken nose, because it's good for the business. It's great for reality. It makes the fans be more passionate about it. Well, all the WWE fans, if you talk to them separately, they all know it's entertainment. They're force-fed. They've been programmed to believe it's all entertainment nowadays. So we don't really hate each other. Mike the Miz is the nicest sweetheart out of the ring because he goes and does the Be a Star program. Don't bully. You got all these guys doing that stuff. There's no real good and bad anymore. They're all superstars. Yeah. You won't see Brock Lesnar going to a bullying thing and sign autographs. You won't see him doing that because, number one, he doesn't want to do it. Number two, he's a bad guy, and he's just being himself multiplied by 1,000. There you go. He's not a people person, so you won't see him doing it. But that's why the fans hate him. You won't see Paul Heyman signing autographs. That's why he gets that antagonistic response from the fans. But you see people cheering, for a guy that is supposed to be being booed. And I got a guy walk out going, really? Really? Everybody wants to have a catchphrase. My whole thought is I'd love to have one run in WWE where I could tell Vince, let me just be a bad guy. And so my whole thing is I'm a bad, not like Razor Ramon, but I'm mean. I want to be hated. I want people to cheer me. I want to be that heel that people just, there's a bloodlust to flatten my tires before I get out of the building. Ole Anderson had that type of heat when he was back in his 70s. I remember he told me that he walked out of the building one time and all 4 tires in his car were flat.
Hey.
And that's when people hate your guts that much that they find out what car you're driving and they flatten your tires. There's none of that anymore.
No.
But they are seeing it in TNA where there's guys who are getting real legitimate heat now.
Oh, yeah.
People don't like these guys, and that's what sells tickets. People buy tickets for WWE for access and everything else because it's a show.
Yep.
People buy the TNA tickets because it's wrestling.
I agree.
You just gotta
I said I'm out here in Phoenix. That's why we lost connection. They were having Bound for Glory here. I'm getting tickets, so there's case in point for you. All righty, man. Well, Scotty, I got to tell you, it's always great having you on. And anytime you want to come in and talk about anything, it's clear you keep up on it. So anytime you want to talk about anything, you're welcome on. It's a blast talking to you, and I have immense respect.
I keep up with a few things. Ever since I've been on Twitter, I keep up with a little bit more, and my Twitter handle is Real Scotty Riggs. For any fans out there who want to, get on Twitter and keep up with me there, you can keep up with me on Facebook, but the Twitter thing has actually got me a little more update on some of this stuff because you can get on a timeline and find out what's going on in some of the stuff. And I've actually become more of a UFC MMA type fan that when they have their stuff on Fox or their prelims or stuff like that, I do watch it.
Yeah.
The MMA live shows and stuff like that, I've caught myself taping them and watch them and stuff like that. So, it's definitely a whole new game out there that, again, it's just like being a kid back in the 70s watching NWA wrestling or whatever. It was believable as an 8-year-old, and watching stuff and going, man, I'm afraid of Ole Anderson, but I love Ricky Steamboat, That was a thing. So, that's what we call being a fan is. You can lose yourself in it and go, man, this is great, and you enjoy it. You don't just want to bring a sign and buy merchandise and see yourself on TV. That's what half these fans want to do nowadays. They take themselves, or they TiVo, DVD, DVR, whatever you want to call it, but they're basically recording themselves they're recording the shows, so when they come back and find out where they are on TV.
There you go.
Their friends, hey, look, there I am when I was, trying to shake Jericho's hand, and he flew past me. Or John Cena, I was trying to shake him, and he runs past everybody. He's the number one good guy. He doesn't, he barely ever does any interaction with fans.
There you go.
So it's goofy, but it's what it is. I know a lot of people on Twitter think I'm such a sweetheart and a nice guy because I will actually sit there. And he's another one that sits on Twitter for like 2 hours and answers people questions. Him and Lance Storm, Shane Helms, some of the guys that I'm with on there that will sit back and answer 15, 20 questions, whether it's, what's your favorite hairdo or what's your favorite drink or your favorite match or there's different questions people ask of you. But sometimes you get asked the same question 20 straight times. It's like, okay, I can blow by some of these things, but
yeah,
it's a way to keep yourself out there. And, they teach me, fans teach me how it's like to be a fan again.
Absolutely. Well, man, I appreciate it so much, and you have a great evening. I'm going to duck for cover and try not to get struck by lightning. And I thank you so much, man, for spending this much time with us tonight.
Very good. Tell me where I can find this show at. What do I need to look up? Epicenter.com or
WrestlingEpicenter.com. You can find it. You have the old interviews on there as well. You could download them. And what I'm doing right now is I'm actually going to put the old interview up on YouTube, followed immediately thereafter by the new one. So we'll have both of them up on YouTube where you can watch them and listen to them in the background or what have you and hear them. And it's been a great tool for us.
What's the link on YouTube for you?
It's IWR Interactive.
IWR.
Yep. But I'll send you a link over the Facebook. I don't do Twitter, but I'll have to get on there. And we'll
Dude, I can tell you and Patrick, if you want to get stuff on MMA, and this is pretty much because the only cool thing about Twitter is it's pretty much minute by minute, blow by blow. Like, I don't get pay-per-views, never have, never will. But if you want to find out what's going on, blow by blow or something, follow it on Twitter. It's almost like watching it. You just got to use your mind to figure out what's going on because people tell you what's going on, bing, 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 as they they sit back and update their Twitter line. You can follow what's happening match per match, whether it's Wrestling Inc. that has their thing on there, or Pro Wrestling Torch, or whatever it is. All the other wrestling sites do the same thing. You can follow the same stuff in their MMA sites, too. Dallas Cowboys, I keep up with the stuff they got going on because I follow them on Twitter. And they have updates hourly that's going on because they're my favorite team. So,
what team was that?
Dallas Cowboys.
Oh, yeah, you're the sworn enemy then. You got two Giants fans on the phones here.
Good. Well, hey, props to you guys for being 9-7 and winning the Super Bowl last year. But, got to give that to the old Eli, excuse me.
Yep.
I always thought Eli had Down syndrome because he always has that goofy look on his face. But
he's deceptive.
He did put Eli into elite by winning that second Super Bowl. Because I picked the Patriots both times against him and lost both times.
There was a picture of that Patrick actually posted, I think, on his Facebook, and I sat there and laughed for 10 minutes, and he always has the Gomer Pyle look on his face. Eli, not Patrick.
Yeah, well, like I'm with.
Well, I do too, but yeah.
Yeah.
And the quote said, "Calm the fuck down, I've got this." And I just laughed my ass off because it's like both times that I was at home going, "Oh, son of a bitch, they're going to lose it, I'm going to lose it, they're going to lose it." And they both came back both times, and I don't know, it just struck me funny.
Well, I've been a Cowboys fan since I was like 5, 6 years old, back in the mid-'70s, from the Roger Staubach with Bob Brunig and Randy White and Ed Too Tall Jones, and all the way till and Michael Irvin and Emmitt Smith and Ken Norton Jr. as a middle linebacker, and with Deion Sanders, all the way till now with Romo and Witten and DeMarcus Ware, and so I've pretty much been a fan. Somebody asked me the other day who was my favorite Cowboys player, and it was Randy White, because he had the coolest nickname. He was the Manster. He's part man, part monster. They called him the Manster, and I was like, to me back in the 70s, that was the coolest nickname in the world, because he was started off as a linebacker, became a defensive lineman because he was too big. He ended up being like around 280, and he was like 6'2", 6'3", just over 54. He was like I said, he started off as a linebacker where he just got too big, but he was just good old country boy type look. But he was so rugged, it was incredible. And just that nickname, the Manster, half man, half monster. Randy, I was like, wow, loved it.
Surprised nobody in wrestling has started to steal that.
Well, when you got guys being the Minotaur and Big Van Vader,
half man, half cow, Mantar. Yeah, I love that one.
Exactly. Some of that stuff gets lost. Like I said, that was in the 70s when it was the Manster. Later on in the 90s, when they were still winning, the Cowboys had prime time. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you go.
So you go from the Manster at prime time, you really can't go back to the Manster anymore. Sorry.
All righty, man. Well, again, thank you so much, Scotty. I'll keep in touch, and you do the same. And anytime you want to talk about anything or anything like that, keep in touch. I always love having you on, man. I really do respect you, and I can't thank you enough for spending this time. And glad to hear you're doing better on the health thing, because it was scary there for a few days. So.
It gets bonkers, but it was definitely a pleasure to be on with you, Patrick, and you, James, for sure. You got my numbers, you got my deals. Call me anytime.
All right.
And be glad to,
Awesome.
Let's not make it 6 years in between anymore.
Let's do that. All right, man. I appreciate it.
Awesome.
You have a great night.
All right, guys. Take care.
I'm going to duck for cover.
All right,
have a
thank
good
you.
night.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Interactive Wrestling Radio here at WrestlingEpicenter.com. I am Patrick Kelly, being joined by Nick Knoll, and we just finished up with our second interview with Scotty Riggs, and once again, it was very good. I know you weren't on the line with us for that one, Nick, but Scotty is a really, really cool guy.
Definitely. I think really enjoyed our first interview with him, and he was actually one of the guys that I kind of thought, people give him so much shit because of, the American male stuff. He's actually a pretty decent worker.
A very good worker, yeah. He was one of the major indicators of that is his work with Rob Van Dam in ECW.
Yeah, I'll honestly say this. I kind of feel like the American males, if the theme song hadn't been really annoying, and if the gimmick hadn't been just so kind of a blatant attempt to do a 90s versions of the Fabulous Ones in a way, they might have actually lasted a lot longer, or would be. I think it would be more fondly remembered if they would have gotten with a couple of changes.
I'll tell you what, they would if they were around today and debuted in the WWE with that theme song, they would probably have a regular spot on the show. And I hate to sound snarky by saying that, but I mean, I think Vince, that's the kind of act he would eat up.
Well, I mean, let's be honest. I mean, I hope Scotty doesn't take offense to this, but I mean, I cannot believe that anyone really listened to that song and said, "This is your entrance music," and it's just the American males, the American males, the American males, repeated 5,000 times within these really generic lyrics. You know, it's like, that's you couldn't have found anything better.
Right, exactly. But yeah, he made a name for himself in the flock, and again in ECW with the clap and everything. So, yeah, Scotty, once again, very cool interview, and it's always a pleasure to have him on with us.
Definitely.
All right, but we've got some news and notes to talk about regarding wrestling, including the Summerslam pay-per-view, which happened last Sunday.
Yeah. Well, I said this in my own personal review, which you can find on my YouTube channel, Griffin Knoll, but it wasn't the worst pay-per-view I've ever seen, but it was kind of boring.
I felt so, too. I thought it was lacking energy. I felt like a lot of the matches, especially the big matches, we'll get to that in a little bit, I felt like nothing on the show really had much of a bite to it, except for maybe the opening match, and
the wrong guy went over.
You know, wrong guy went over. It made me look like an idiot, right? How many hats do I have to eat now?
Yeah, I mean, when I saw Jericho go over, my immediate thought was, wow, I think they heard our show and just wanted to make Patrick look bad.
Yeah, things like that happen all the time. It's like, well, I remember last year at Bound for Glory, I was like, oh, Rude's going to go over, no question. And then he doesn't, and it kind of ends the pay-per-view on a really bad note. And I don't know, it's just, things like that always happen once in a while. It makes me wonder if, like, somebody in the WWE and TNA isn't trying to make me look stupid.
I remember there was one time you said something like, if that happens, I will eat my hat. Because you were so convinced it wasn't going to happen, and then the WWE wound up doing it.
I think it was when Flair won the IC title against Carlito. I was so sure. It's like, they're never going to do that. That would be stupid beyond belief. Oh, my God, they did it.
Yeah.
Wow.
But, I'll be honest. I firmly believe Jericho came into this run in the WWE, jammed in first gear, and he wasn't going to get to second gear just no matter what. I mean, he kind of got close sometimes during the Punk feud, but I was not impressed with this run from Jericho. And, the wrong guy went over. It was one of those cases of, I think, well, you know what, this will shock the fans because they all expect Ziggler to go over. It's like, you know what they should have done? If they wanted to do a stipulation where Jericho loses and he has to leave, that would have been the perfect story to do at SummerSlam and give Ziggler a big win. It seems like every year someone wins the Money in the Bank, and that becomes an excuse to job them out repeatedly because it's like, well, they're going to get the title anyway.
Right, and it's a horrible mindset because you have this, they don't book the Money in the Bank winners like they did with Edge initially, where Edge was one of the top guys in the company while he carried that briefcase, and he was, a star on the rise, and to the point that by the time, before he even won the belt, I was calling, oh, he's going to go into Mania as champion. It didn't happen, but, I thought of Edge as a legit star, and it was just a matter of time before he was going to win the belt. Daniel Bryan last year, I forgot he was with the company while he had the Money in the Bank. And I honest to God forgot he was even with the company. And I was like, I think November rolled where I was like, holy shit, Daniel Bryan's still here? And he still got the briefcase? I completely forgot about that.
I honestly think the only two guys that were allowed to win matches consistently after Money in the Bank was Edge and Rob Van Dam the second year.
Mm-hmm.
Because part of that, I think, was the fact that they knew exactly when Rob Van Dam was going to cash in. They knew, well, we're doing the ECW show, we're relaunching ECW, so that's going to be the main event to that. So there wasn't time to fuck him up.
Yeah, and then you have some cases like Kane where he won out of nowhere. It's like, well, okay, what the hell was that? And he just cashed it in that night.
Well,
and yeah.
It was so they could do a shitty feud with The Undertaker.
Yeah, by the way, his feud with Taker and his feud with Edge were two of the worst world title programs I've ever seen. Just throwing that out there. So for those of you that wanted Kane to be world champion, thank you. Thank you. That's what we got. So, hey.
So we had Jericho go over on the first match. Moving on to kind of...
yeah, very good match. I'll say that, very good match. I really enjoyed it. I thought they kind of had the same match the next night on Raw, and you already touched up on it a bit. The stipulation of the contract versus contract thing, that should have been the SummerSlam story. And they could have had Jericho say, it's like, well, I need to prove that I can win the big one. Well, it was like they just said, oh, it's the big one, but there was really nothing at stake. It was just a pay-per-view match. But all right, I have put the Money in the Bank contract on the line, and he puts his career on the line, and that's your pay-per-view match.
Exactly. You know, and they didn't do that. And then you had Jericho beat him up the next night.
Right, again, they have to have the face, and it made Jericho look like a dick, I thought he came off like the heel.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, this is something we see a lot in wrestling where the belief is, well, we got to protect the legend. No, the legend can take the hit. You got to protect the young guy that doesn't have a lot of credibility.
Exactly. And I think it would have done a lot for Ziggler to have him be the guy that ended Jericho's career and then beat the shit out of him. Exactly. I mean, if you want to have Jericho come back and do a revenge match at WrestleMania, you have that option. Or even if you don't, it's like, look, he could use that. Look, I'm the guy that ended Jericho's career and beat the shit out of him on his way out, and they could run with that and set him up for some other babyface to take down.
Yep, exactly. Anyway, moving on to the match, we have Daniel Bryan versus Kane. It wasn't a good match, but I actually have to give the WWE some credit here. Because Daniel Bryan went over, and then they actually took that as a big moment. You have Michael Cole go, wow, Daniel Bryan has never beaten Kane before. And not only did he beat him after he took the choke slam, and Kane was setting up for the Tombstone Piledriver. That's a big win for Daniel Bryan. And they almost never do that where they really sell a victory well for a guy, especially a heel. So I was kind of glad to see them do that. That, however, does not make up for the bad match and the fact that I hate fucking Kane.
Yeah, we all know how much you like Kane, but again, I'm going to applaud them here for doing what I was just criticizing. Okay, they did the opposite of what I was just criticizing them for. Daniel Bryan, who has been kind of a goofball clown that gets humiliated every week, now he gets a win over Kane and gets away without getting hurt. And then the next night on Raw, when Kane goes after him, he's able to get away again. So it's like, oh my God, they actually kind of sort of build heat on a guy.
Yes.
Whoa.
Honest to God, heel heat.
It's like, wow. What a crazy concept. And now it's like you can build this whole thing. Again, it's not the most creative thing in the world or the greatest thing they've ever done, but you can do this thing where he keeps running away and Kane keeps getting frustrated that he can't get him, and there you go. You can get something out of that probably.
You know what? Sometimes you don't need to be the most creative in the world. Sometimes going for something simple like Daniel Bryan keeps running away just works. There's an old saying, keep it simple, stupid.
Right. Exactly.
Then we had the snooze match, which was the Intercontinental Championship, Rey Mysterio versus the defending champion, The Miz. The crowd didn't care. We didn't care about it going in. The Miz went over. That's about all you can say.
I mean, and I'm not blaming either guy for this. It's just there's no reason to give a shit about the Intercontinental title. And that's just what it boils down to. And they could have put anybody in this match and it would have made a difference.
Yeah, and apparently Ray got a concussion, so he's back on the show.
Oh, dear.
Yeah.
So, his career is winding down, man. He seems to be getting hurt more and more.
More and more. I mean, as James is fond of saying, he got hurt every other month in WCW back in 1996. I mean,
right.
His career's been winding down for the last decade, it seems like.
Right. You're right. He's absolutely right. I don't remember, did Mysterio wrestle at WrestleMania this year?
Did Ray wrestle at WrestleMania? I don't think so. I think he was hurt or he was serving his one of his wellness suspensions.
Okay. So that happened, and it was what it was. It wasn't a terrible match. It just nobody cared, and that's just the way it is. Nobody gives a shit about the IC title. So yeah.
They announced it going in, but it might as well have been one of those bonus matches that they're so fond of.
Which there were none of on this show. I will applaud it. No bonus matches here. So it didn't, at the very least, SummerSlam didn't feel like they were just making shit up as they went, which, that was my major knock on Over the Limit and No Way Out.
Yeah.
Where it felt like half the show was made up on the fly.
Yeah. Up next was the World Heavyweight Championship match. It was Sheamus versus Alberto Del Rio with Ricardo Rodriguez. This was a bad match, and it had one of the most confusing, stupidest endings I've ever seen. It came off, I wasn't sure if they're trying to turn Sheamus heel or what, or if they were trying to do, turnabout's fair play. I mean, it was just like, it was like a 4-year-old booked this.
It was bad. It was not a good match. It was just really boring, and I'm sorry, I don't like the matches these two have. I didn't like their match last month, and I didn't like this one. And the ending only served. It really reminded me of WrestleMania 9 when Shawn Michaels and Tatanka had their match, where it's just kind of this out of. What was that? Well, Nick, are you still there?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Okay, something happened. Okay, but yeah, it was just this awkward finish that came out of nowhere and just completely threw the match out of whack. And it wasn't that good of a match before then either. So, yeah.
Yeah, and for those that didn't see it, let me just describe the finish. Del Rio had 2 count on Sheamus. He then got so frustrated he started beating up Ricardo in the middle of the match. That logic alone confuses me because, okay, you nearly beat the guy and you want to beat up your valet or your announcer. And then Ricardo tries to throw Sheamus his shoe. Sheamus catches it, knocks Del Rio out. Del Rio gets his foot on the rope. Sheamus pulls it off. So I'm like, were they trying to protect Del Rio or what?
I honestly don't know. Well, they want to do a rematch, which, yay.
Honest to God, why? Someone please explain to me. I want the one Alberto Del Rio fan who's out there to contact me and explain to me why you're a fan of this man. Because this guy is boring. He has bad matches. The gimmick doesn't work. I do not get why they're so convinced this. It seems like they're so desperate to make this guy a star because he's Latin and they want to tap into the Latin or Spanish market. They're just saying, well, it doesn't matter how good he is in the ring. It's the Cena logic.
I think he's like a decent athlete, or better than decent, a decent athlete and a pretty good worker. It's just, I don't get the character. It's just Mexican JBL, and I think his promos are awful. So, I don't know, the character just doesn't do it for me.
You know what? I would rather see JBL come out with a sombrero and a fake mustache and do this gimmick than see Del Rio try to be Mexican JBL.
Oh, wow. Yeah, but he's going to get the title shot at Night of Champions, so look forward to that.
Yeah. God. Anyway, moving on to titles that don't really matter, we had Kofi Kingston and R-Truth defend the WWE Tag Team Championships versus the Primetime Players, and actually, that's
I'm going to say W.
Something, Patrick. The lack of the W really did make this team suck even more.
Yeah, no, they're terrible. I mean, they really are. Darren Young and Titus O'Neil are not good, but AW, as their manager, kind of covered some of that. So if you remove him from that equation, it's kind of like, wow, they're really boring.
Yeah. You know what? The tag titles don't mean that much. They haven't built, a team up well in a long, long, long time. So, I mean, what does it matter? I mean, Kofi and R-Truth retained. I guess next month they'll do like a 4-way because it seems like that's what they always do at Night of Champions.
Right. It's my idea, quite honestly, with the tag division, scrap the titles, just get rid of them, and then over the course of, say, 6 to 8 months, work in developmental and try to create, like, let's say 6 to 8 tag teams and have them be polished in FCW. And then after a long period where the tag titles have been gone, bring them back in like a big way and introduce all of these teams along the way. And to just start fresh.
That might almost be the best solution. You do have guys down on what is now NXT full time that have the potential to be some good tag teams. You know what? You got Chris Hero, who's Cassius Olmo, and Antonio Cesaro, a.k.a. Claudio Castagnoli. Honestly, I say shame on TNA, shame on WWE. Both these guys should have been signed a long time ago, and they should have come in as a tag team together. Because
Absolutely.
they are the embodiment of what a great tag team is. They wrestle similar styles. They complement one another. They have similar builds. I mean, these guys are the perfect tag team as far as I'm concerned. It's a damn shame that they're not going to, that because the way WWE is, we'll probably never see them be the kings of wrestling on a major stage.
I know. I fully agree with you. I think just watching them in ROH, I think that some of my favorite teams in the last decade were America's Most Wanted and Beer Money Inc. I think Kings of Wrestling are every bit as good as those teams.
Absolutely. I'm going to say, and I'm going to say it again. Shame on TNA, because you know what? I would have loved to see a Beer Money versus Kings of Wrestling match.
Oh man, that would have been awesome.
Which just shows how interesting the tag team match is when we would rather debate how awesome two tag teams that aren't even together anymore fighting for TNA would have been.
You're right, exactly. But I keep reading reports that Triple H wants to bring back tag team wrestling, and okay, that's all well and good. But from what I'm seeing on TV, it's not that much different from what you always do. It's tag team champions are two singles guys that you threw together because you didn't know what to do with them, and they're working with the tag team of the month or the tag team of the period. That's going to get featured because they're in tag title contention, and that's it. And then you got a few like jobber teams that don't really go anywhere. And that's like, how's that any different from what they always do?
Yeah, and Patrick, you know what? I hear the only difference between these reports now and the reports that we've heard for years about the tag team division getting serious again is now they're saying Triple H is responsible for it.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
you know what? Take the internet with a grain of salt because they also said that the three-way was going to close SummerSlam. Didn't happen. Yeah. They also said that Rock and Cena was going to be canceled. Didn't happen. They didn't even tease that was going to happen, so I don't know. They say a lot of shit, and a lot of it's not true. So let's take that for what it's worth.
Because up next was the three-way for the WWE Championship, CM Punk, John Cena, and The Big Show. And,
horrible match.
Yeah, horribly structured because it was like they said, no one believes The Big Show is going to win this match. You know what we should do? We should have the whole match be him throwing around Cena and Punk.
Right, and you know what? And again, I agree with you that Big Show shouldn't be pushed anymore in 2012, but all right, you turn him heel, you want to do a monster push. Could you at least meet me halfway and do it right? Could you at least, okay, you want to do this, you want to make him a monster, then you have to make Big Show an unstoppable juggernaut force that just tears through everybody. And again, I pose this question, between the winning streak that he was on leading into No Way Out and the match he had with David Otunga on Raw, between that period, I honestly do not recall a single match that he won. Not one. I can't. He might have one, but I don't recall any because most of the time I'm seeing him get his ass kicked. So, so he's not a monster. He's not the favorite to win this match just based on what you did with him on TV. Based on what they did with him on TV, he doesn't even belong in this match. And yet, come match time, they decide to work the entire match around him dominating. And I'm like, no, you screwed that pooch. That's not going to work because I don't believe for a microsecond that Big Show's going to win. No, I mean, this isn't Andre Hogan at WrestleMania 3 where the whole match was basically Andre just destroying Hogan, but it worked because people believed that Andre was going to destroy him.
Right. And I'm also going to say this. The finish was another pretty stupid one. And first off, you had the finish where it was Big Show and Punk and Cena both locked in their submission holds, and it's like, well, who won? Who won? And you know
Punk
what?
locked in first.
Yeah. Who? You know what? Here's my thing. Since TNA did this something similar the week before, you might want to tweak it. And I'm of the belief that that if WWE does something around the same time TNA has it planned, TNA should try to alter their plans a little bit. And also, why is it Big Show was still on the match after it got restarted? The issue wasn't did Big Show win. The issue was who got the hold on Big Show that made him tap.
And it was Punk. I mean, he applied his hold first. So if there was any controversy in the ending to this match, is that Punk wasn't declared the winner right there because, it makes Cena look like an idiot because he just says, I'll just apply my hold too. Whoa! It's like instead of, do what Punk did and break it up, for the actual finish.
By the way, Patrick, I want you to say the line about Pavlovian dogs that you said about Cena.
Okay, for those of you who don't know, Cena, after the match, he pleaded his case that he was the winner. And here was his argument. Look, I heard him tap, and then I heard a bell. I heard a bell. And that just put the idea in my head that, John Cena hears a bell, he's supposed to be the champion. That's how that works. It's like a Pavlovian dog. But look, I heard a bell. I should be the champion. What? And that was his whole argument. And then Punk's like, hey, listen to the fans. They'll tell you what happened. And, hey, I applied my hold first. So it really made Cena look kind of stupid. I think it's like, hey, well, I heard a bell. Well, of course you did, you moron.
Yeah. It's like this. I mean, they're trying to convince us that Punk is this heel or this bad guy that he turned on the audience. I'm like, really? They haven't done anything all that different from the CM Punk, that's been the number one, been the champion for so long, and they're also like, oh, that was a horrible way for CM Punk to do that. How could he possibly win a match like that? How disgusting. What? He took advantage of the situation within the rules. It's not like he hit Cena with the belt or anything. Cena hit a move. He took care of Cena. He got the pinfall. That's supposed to be how the match works.
That's the rules of a triple threat. If Cena's character had been smart, he would have broken up Punk's submission earlier rather than just lock on his.
Yeah, and also I'll say this. Them arguing it would be like if in the playoffs, if say in the playoffs this year, it's the Giants versus the Redskins, and Robert Griffin III throws an interception that gets bobbled, and the Giants manage to get a hold of it, and they run it back for a touchdown. That's like arguing, how could the Giants take a win like that? They didn't score it. They got lucky because of the way the ball fell. No, you idiots. The rules worked out for them.
It's amazing what they'll spout off as controversial, but and I talked about this in my last video, but they kind of have this thing. It's like, look, if something bad happens to the baby faces, it's bad because they're the baby faces, and if something bad happens to the heels, they deserve it because they're the heels. But if you actually look at the story and break it down, it's kind of like, look, a lot of the times the heels are kind of victims. Like Daniel Bryan and a lot of his recent stuff is like, look, he's at the mercy of his boss who already humiliated him by leaving him at the altar. It's like, all right, AJ already got his revenge, so why is she focusing so much of her attention trying to destroy him? Alberto Del Rio's been screwed over and had his property stolen and destroyed. And when Sheamus does it, it's like, oh, you silly Sheamus. And then when Del Rio tries to, get back at him, it's like, oh, you lose your title shot. You're a jerk. Like, what? You see, so again, who are the heels here?
Yeah. Exactly. It's like there are no. It's like you can have people be good guys and bad guys, and sometimes the good guy can do a bad guy-ish thing, but you got to be careful about how you do it. And if you do it all the time, you do get this situation where it's like, well, if anything, this guy's a jerk, not the guy you're telling me to boo.
Right, Austin did that. He was basically a heel that was a babyface when Austin was at his peak. But he turned his venom towards people that deserved it, and, like Vince McMahon and when he was the corporate champion, The Rock and Triple H and things of that nature. So that's why that worked. Because these are guys that are, indisputably jackasses.
Exactly. You know what? but it's like when you're doing it to guys, you know, that really, as you said, Daniel Bryan's a perfect example of this. He's the guy that got humiliated at the altar. He's been forced to go to anger management classes and all this stupid shit. It's like, well, you know what? I'd be kind of mad too.
Right, exactly. But yeah, I was not a fan of the triple threat. So,
and we have the main event, which
you don't want to talk about the musical performance where Fred Durst flipped off the camera, which was kind of funny, but yeah.
You know what? This is gonna sound like a James line, but as I was watching these guys come out and perform, and then I saw all the divas come out, I'm like, that's probably as close to these as these losers will ever get to a woman.
Yeah, the musical performance was really, really bad.
Yeah, I'm serious. This is what passes for rock stars today? Seriously, say what you want, but, you know, like, Robert Plant, Jimmy Page, Led Zeppelin, look like stars. Bon Jovi, had a look. Van Halen, had a look. These guys just look like these guys look like the people that get rejected for those freecredit.com commercials.
Yep, but they're good enough for the WWE. But yeah, so that was that. I just wanted to bring that up because it was horrible, as most wrestling musical performances are.
Well, it's very simple. If I want to listen to music, I'll listen to music. If I want to watch wrestling, I'll watch wrestling.
Now I will accept it at WrestleMania because it's kind of like the Super Bowl where the halftime show is just kind of a break from the action because the Super Bowl is really long, as football games tend to be. And WrestleMania, with the extra hour, it's easy for that to drag. So it's like, all right, I can at least give us a piss break in the middle. I can kind of understand it. But on a 3-hour pay-per-view, there was no real reason for it.
Well, I could understand it maybe if it was supposed to be like a special entrance, like at WrestleMania 14, they had the DX band there to play Shawn and Triple H out. That makes sense to me because it was supposed to be unique. And Triple H has done that with Motorhead a couple times where they'll play his theme live for his entrances. To me, that makes sense because it adds something to the entrance. This is just, hey, everyone, no wrestling for a couple minutes. Let's bring out these guys.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and then like Lawler comes back and it's like, your dancing was terrible, Cole. It's like, no. The funny thing to me in all this was you would see like random pockets of people that did get up to dance. For the most part, everyone sat in their seats.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we get on a Cole and Lawler rant. We'll be here all night. They are, honest to God, the worst thing in professional wrestling. I'm not even kidding.
And fucking Lawler's going to fight Punk on Monday. God fucking... I don't want to hear
I'm fine with that as long as Punk destroys him. Like, I would be fine with that as long as Punk destroyed him, but given their history with Lawler, I have my doubts.
You know what's probably going to happen? Cena will come out, do something to Punk, Lawler will win.
That would be horrible.
Which, by the way, in his book, Jerry Lawler talks about how the WWE had a plan one year for him to do like a little feud with Raven. Raven said, well, I don't think that's going to help me at all because I'm trying to be a full-time wrestler. I want to get away from doing announcing. At the time, he was announcing on Sunday Night Heat. I want to get back to the ring full-time. I don't think losing to Lawler is going to help me at all with that. And apparently everyone in the locker room was like, how dare you? You know what? Raven was right. I'm sorry.
They have their little clubhouse bullshit rules, and it's amazing, like the things that you're expected to do. And, I mean, let's be honest, Triple H would never do that. Oh, yeah, he did lose to JR once, but that was, like, after Batista beat the living crap out of him. So it was meant to build into something with Batista.
And also I think it was, there was apparently some heat on Triple H for the way he had booked one of his matches with Batista, so that was kind of like his attempt to make good with people backstage.
Which match was that? I don't even remember reading about that.
It was I don't know. It was just the whole feud with Triple H and Batista was basically Triple H would beat Batista up, and then Batista would hit the Batista bomb to win.
Mm-hmm.
With the exception of the Hell in a Cell, I will give Triple H credit. In the Hell in a Cell, it was pretty even, and he did get destroyed.
Okay. I don't even remember. I remember complaining about that at WrestleMania 21, where it was like the whole match was just Batista selling for Triple H, which is stupid because Batista can't sell. So it's like, why would you have him do that? That's what he's worst at.
Yeah. All right. Speaking of Triple H, let's move on to a mild storm. I mean, they were trying to build us as it's the perfect storm. You know, Brock Lesnar versus Triple H. No, it wasn't the perfect storm. It was hardly even a mild shower.
Well, let me say this. I thought the finish was cool. I thought the right guy went over, definitely. So I'll applaud them for that because I was definitely afraid that they wouldn't do that. Because if they're going to bring Brock back, they need to, have him win. So, again, what we talk about, build his heat and then set him up for a fall. So I liked all of that stuff. However, the match was not very good. I'm sorry. And I thought the Cena-Lesnar match at Extreme Rules was much better. Just a much better match because it wasn't a typical WWE match. It was this intense, brutal beating of John Cena, and it was honestly got one of Cena's better matches, I think. And all he did was stand there and get his ass kicked.
Right. And, they had Triple H take this beating, but, it wasn't really selling like Cena did. And then he did this, and I will give them credit. I liked them doing the thing where Triple H threw him into the announce table and Lesnar hit his stomach, and you have Michael Cole go, oh, man, that's big because Brock's had so many problems with his intestines. But Triple H should have sold more. That should have come off as like a moment where like Triple H had no chance. He was doomed, and he hit the one lucky the one lucky punch and got the shot he needed to get himself back in the game. Instead,
well, if I can use a Rocky comparison, it's like in Rocky IV where Ivan Drago just dominated the early portion of the fight, and then Rocky scores a lucky punch that cuts him. It's like, see, he's not a machine. He's not a machine. He's a man. He bleeds, and that should have been that moment. But the match was so, and I think again comparing it to the Cena-Lesnar match, it was such an ordinary match. It was like typical WWE. Okay, the heel has control and just slowly beats him down, and then the babyface makes his comeback type of thing. It wasn't like anything that different, and I think that really kept it from being that special.
Right. And the finish was cool. You almost wish they would have done that at the Cena match where, they managed to get that big, he managed to lock in the move, and then he, quote, broke the arm again. But, I'll just say this. I was really disgusted with the ending where it was all, to me it came off as it was more important that lost than Brock Lesnar won.
And again, going back to the match, I didn't feel like, and of course I didn't know that they'd broken his arm again. That was a point that they made the next night on Raw, and I'm glad that they made that point. But I didn't feel like Triple H had been, beaten within an inch of his life by a superior opponent. I didn't feel like he had been through hell, like his matches with Undertaker or like the Cena-Lesnar match. I didn't get that feeling. It was just kind of an ordinary match. And they tried to sell it as like this gigantic big time fight, and I didn't feel that at all. And I was disappointed because I was really excited for this match too. I really wanted this match to be good, and it was just kind of okay, but it wasn't the excellent match I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, well, I do feel like, and I talked about this, the Triple H ego got in the way where he didn't want to do the same level of selling that Cena did. And you're right, for that Cena match, most of that match is just Cena getting the living, hell whipped out of him like we had never seen before. At times he was down. He looked like he could barely move. It was like, oh my God, this is like from a storyline perspective, it was like, oh my God, this is it. John Cena's finally met the one guy he can't fight back against, and then it
looked like they took a professional wrestler and put him in there with a UFC fighter, and that's why that match worked because it looked like Cena was in there with a completely different animal than what he was used to.
And this just felt like it was two pro wrestlers going at it.
Right, and, I'm going to throw a knock at Triple H here. When he said, this isn't the UFC, this is the WWE, I'm like, okay, dude, if this were the UFC, you'd be dead, okay? let's put you in the ring with Anderson Silva or George St. Pierre or even, I know that she's from Strikeforce, but put him in the ring with Ronda Rousey and see what happens.
I would love to see Triple H try to fight Ronda Rousey.
I think she could take him. I really do.
He really would get his arm broken.
Yeah, I mean, and I watched the Strikeforce show last Saturday, and I'll go ahead and throw this out there. I'm not the biggest MMA fan or expert in the world, but congrats to the girls. Ronda Rousey is a legit badass, and I felt like Julie Kedzie and Miesha Tate had one of the most exciting fights I've ever seen.
Right. I'll conclude that. I also want to congrat Anthony Smith, who fought on the main card on Showtime. He's actually out of Omaha, Nebraska, and Premier Combat Center, which is where I do my kickboxing. So got a big win there for the team there. And fuck John Jones.
Fuck John Jones. Yeah, I heard about that. The UFC actually has to cancel a show because of him?
Yes. That's all we need to say. I don't want to go into this because I have been in total fan rage mode like the last couple days.
I don't blame you. If I were UFC, I wouldn't bring him back. Although, here's the thing. This is where the professional wrestling mindset comes in. They'll bring him back just because they know the fans will have a lot of heat for him.
Right. And, well, they've already announced he will fight Vitor Belfort, and it's working. I mean,
okay.
I'm like, go Belfort, go.
Exactly. So, yeah, MMA just found its new top heel.
Well, anyway, on Monday, I mean, I didn't see the whole show, but it seemed like it was suffering from all the same problems. And you had John Cena and CM Punk, and you had Cena come out and just do that typical, I'm John Cena, I should get a title shot, ass-kissing promo that he always does when he wants to sound epic.
He's a pandering douchebag. And I don't even remember where they were or what sports team he was talking about, but when he was like kissing the ass of the sports team that he was talking about, I was like, dude, fuck you. It's like, I'm trying to remember what town they were in. When he did his rap, his Thugonomics rap on The Rock, leading into WrestleMania, and he said something about Rock being a pandering douche or something, and he's wearing a jersey for that town's basketball team. I don't remember who it was or what the team was, or I don't even remember what town it was, but I'm like, dude, who's the pandering jerk? You're a Boston sports fan and you're walking around with that jersey on. Screw you.
Yeah, and it just came out. They want I feel like what they try to go for Cena a lot with is they want him to have like that big epic motivational speech that you see sometime in the movies.
Mm-hmm.
The big like we're down but we're gonna come back. That let's go win one for the Gipper. And it doesn't work because he's such a pansy.
And I think large pockets of the audience, especially adult males, can't stand him because they can see through the bullshit. He's one of the most blatantly manipulative marketing elements that the WWE's ever had. Maybe the biggest. He's obviously he's the Pokemon of professional wrestling, where he's just a bunch of shit, color-coded and prettied up and marketed towards kids.
I am stunned that they haven't done the lady on the train tracks with John Cena, where you I am stunned.
They kind of did it earlier this year, if you think about it, with Eve and the whole Kane and Zack Ryder thing.
I'm stunned, though, that they didn't do that where Eve was tied down and Kane was going to go over with a car or something.
Yeah.
I know Bret Hart made that comparison in Wrestling with Shadows, but he wasn't being literal about it.
Yeah, they might do that, but
Bret said about his heel turn. He says sometimes eventually I think people get sick and tired of seeing rescue the lady off the train tracks. I'm surprised that WWE hasn't actually tried that with John Cena.
Yeah. Don't give them ideas, Nick. Like, we already established that they listen to us. So.
I'll say this. If that happens within the next 6 months, I want money.
Oh, yeah.
And of course, last night was Impact, and I think it was another very well done show. And I loved the big moment at the end where you had the aces and eights. You had that big brawl, it was very realistic. It swung back and forth. Some guys in TNA had an advantage. The Aces and Eights had advantages over other guys. But in the end, the bad guys won the night, and they injured the World Heavyweight Champion.
Right, and now I've talked to some people, and they're speculating if Austin Aries is going to drop the title. And the ending of the Impact was very good, and I really liked the opening segment as well. It really does feel like a big gang war, and credit to TNA, I was done with stable angles. I was just done. It's like, if I see another stable, I'm going to just fucking go ballistic. But this Aces and Eights thing has been really, really good, and the mystery's still going, and they've done a good job of, like, planting little clues here and there to lead you in one direction. I don't think the Aces and Eights have ever laid a hand on Bully Ray yet. And that's something they haven't brought up, and it's like, well, maybe he's behind it. I think Samoa Joe's behind it. There's a guy that looks like he's the leader of the group, and I swear to God that's Samoa Joe.
Ryan Portell, who's one of our posters on Facebook, agrees with you. And watching last night, the guy that kind of is supposed to be the leader, and that was kind of the guy that seemed like Aries was fighting at the end before the gang all got him, was kind of big like Joe. And when he kind of hit that, clothesline on Joe, I'll be honest, Aries and Joe have done that spot a couple times where Joe hits him with it and Aries flips like that.
So, right, but then you think, in addition to that, I've heard Jeff Jarrett's name flying around, and he would have a motive to do it. It was like it could have stemmed from the Hall of Fame snub at Slammiversary. So, okay, that could be that. Bobby Roode even is like maybe, the fact that they went after Aries, did he pay them off to have them go after Aries so he could get his title shot again? We don't know. They've still got so many different things they could go with this, and it's still really interesting.
And one thing I like about it is they're doing the stuff with the prospects. Where last night they got the mask off one of them, you're like, well, who the hell is this guy? And then you kind of realize, well, shit, there are guys that are going to come in here that aren't actually part of this damn gang that want to be a part of it. It's like you got the main group, which are kind of the guys that were standing tall, being the Impact over Aries, and then you're going to have all these little splinters that are going to come up, and it's like, well, shit, anyone could potentially be a member of this thing.
Yeah, they had to be around, and it really reminded me of when the Sting Army attacked the NWO, only it was with heels, where it's like members of the Aces and Eights just kept coming and coming and coming. It's like, how many of these guys are there? It's Jesus Christ. This is pretty sweet. But yeah, I mean, that storyline and the Bound for Glory series on Impact every week has really made the show highly watchable, I would say, and Impact's been pretty good. So, and they had a couple ups and downs last night, but the opening was really strong and the closing was very, very strong.
Right, and the good news is we can finally say at least one giant step has been taken. Claire Lynch is gone.
Wait, who's gone?
Claire Lynch.
Claire Lynch, yes. Thank you, Jesus Christ. That is over. Hooray! Well, you heard the story about that. She actually quit on them a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, thank God. Thank God it's finally over. From what I understand, the woman who is an actress, she asked for her release because apparently some very ticked off wrestling fans were like flooding her like various accounts and different things about how bad an actress she was.
Wrestling fans are idiots. Let me just say, they are mutants. But, I mean, I'm not sorry to see her go, but, I mean, come on. You don't need to harass people like that.
Yeah. So, good. I'll say, I don't want to sound cruel here, but best of luck to her going forward. I'm not trying to mock her. She wants to be an actress. Good luck. Pursue your dream. I'm just glad this angle's wrapping up.
It's over! Yay!
Well, I don't know. Last night when it happened, I actually posted a link to Kool and the Gang playing Celebration.
Actually, I'm going to talk about the last segment a little bit, and I think they kind of missed the ball here. Instead of hiring some lady to play her lawyer, I would have had Joseph Park come out and be the guy, because Joseph Park, I really grown to like that character. I can't wait to see the next thing that they do with him.
Well, I'll say this. On the post-show, they did do something where Kaz and Daniels got on their phones as they were being interviewed, like, hey, Joseph, we need you. We've been slandered. So it seemed like they're going to try to So I don't know if that's going to pay off in any way, but they might be bringing Joseph Parks back to kind of get involved with the stories.
Okay, sounds good. But, yeah, TNA, and, they're going well. The Bound for Glory series is wrapping up. Last I checked, they have 5 matches left to go, and that'll lead to No Surrender, and then Bound for Glory, which I hope James has got his tickets.
Yeah, well, they're doing a contest where you can enter for a chance to win, so cross your fingers for me. I hope I win that one.
I would enter that, but there's no way I'd be able to take time off and go out to Arizona for a few days. There's just no way. But, good luck to you there.
Yeah. Well, it's probably a 1 in a million shot, but, hey, you never know what could happen. Definitely, yeah. And, other than kind of just want breaking down the card a little bit further, you had in the Bound for Glory series, and I know you're not a big fan of the guy, but you had that stuff with Robbie E. where he scored the lucky pinfall on Rob Van Dam, but you know what, that's something for his character going forward where he's the perfect kind of guy to start bragging about his huge wins in the Bound for Glory series, even though he only has the 2. Because he's that kind of guy.
I think they did that just to kind of, they had to make up for the Pope not being there, and that was their best answer. It was a good way to address that. It was just, I think they did that just to not have it muck up whatever their plans are. So they gave it to the guy that's not going to shake up the rankings too much. And a minor nitpick here. The other Bound for Glory series match they did, Anderson versus Ray, I wish they had worked the story around Anderson trying to get a submission win because that's what he needed to get into the top 4, and they didn't do that. And I was just kind of like, well, that just makes Anderson look stupid.
Yeah. I guess kind of maybe going forward, I think the bigger impact might just be, though, that means Bully Ray missed another opportunity to, score points. So it makes it, just a little bit harder where I think because you only have so many matches left, there's going to be a lot of focus on these last few weeks as you're just trying to get into that, red line, if you're trying to get above, as they're calling it, the red line of death.
Right. But, yeah, I did enjoy Impact this week, mainly because of the Aces and Eights stuff that they did. They've really, I can't praise them enough, and hopefully the ultimate reveal is a good one because the storyline's been going pretty well so far.
And I also kind of want to give credit to the Tara and Miss Tessmacher match where my thought process is, well, geez, we have a good reason to have Tara get a title shot, and they didn't just go for the sudden of, oh, I'm pissed at you, so now I'm a bad person and I want a title shot, It's like, they kept Tara face, so, now they might turn her heels as the weeks go on, but it's like there's a logical reason for why Tara's getting the next title shot. She beat the champion.
Right, and I thought the finish of that match was pretty cool, too.
Right. I mean, it played into the whole idea, the idea of, Tara's Tessmacher's mentor, so she would know what she's going to do in those moments. Yeah, so, TNA continues to be pretty good. Is there anything else we need to cover? Well, we don't really need to cover it, but I do want to make a little joke.
Okay.
ROH has said that it's interested in working with non-profit groups for charity fundraising. I find it funny that a company that can't turn a profit wants to work with non-profits.
But what's ROH even doing right now? I haven't followed them in forever.
They're getting ready for the epic Rhino versus Kevin Steen match.
Is that seriously going to be their main event?
Yep, next pay-per-view main event. Rhino versus Kevin Steen.
Okay, I don't want to ever hear Ring of Honor fans mock TNA ever again. Because oh my God, I remember when Rhino was getting title shots in TNA, they were just going ballistic. And like, oh, this old guy's in the main event, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, first of all, I like Rhino. Let me just say that. I really liked him in TNA. I loved him in ECW. I think Rhino's an all-around good talent. However, it was like, oh yeah, we push the young guys here, and then you've got Rhino in your main event. So, yeah, okay. We push our own talents. We don't push ex-WWE guys and the world's greatest tag team get the tag titles, which they should get the tag titles. I'm just saying it's just kind of like, hypocritical. And I'm just saying.
Which, by the way, they blew the ending to the tag title tournament.
What'd they do?
They said, they allowed Jimmy Jacobs and Steve Corino, who are two of the top heels in ROH right now, to enter the tournament. But the stipulation is if they don't win, they have to leave ROH forever.
Why would they do that?
Jim Cornette's a fucking idiot.
Well, I know you don't like Cornette very much, but wow. I'm a little surprised. You'd think after Kenny King left and all the snafu that happened there, they'd hold on to every tag team they got.
Yeah, well, as far as pretty much the minute that got announced, pretty much every ROH fan I know said, "Well, I guess that means Corino and Jacobs win the tag titles."
Yeah.
So I mean, like either they're going to get rid of one of their top heel acts, or have a finish everyone sees coming 5 miles away.
Right, and that's where the old school booking kind of gets in the way, where and with the internet, things get leaked all the time, and it's hard to make things shocking like that. Like back in the day, before the internet was a big thing, that probably would have been a big deal. But now it's like, okay, are their contracts up? No, then they're winning, most likely. So, yeah.
Exactly, and I'll say it, when ROH needs to start making serious changes in its booking philosophy, and I think a lot of that is you got to get rid of the current booking team. It's clear to anyone who knows anything that Jim Cornette is the primary voice of, it's primarily Jim Cornette's vision, and it's not working. It is literally not working. I mean, there are hardcore ROH fans. I mean, the bots, the people that, have been watching that company for years, they're saying this sucks. And I cannot imagine that show is attracting a lot of really new fans to buy ROH DVDs or iPay-per-views.
And neither can I. This is the least, I'll be honest, this year, 2012, is the least amount of coverage I've seen ROH get from the internet.
I mean, that show is just, it's just so, boring. It literally is something out of 1975. And I think a big problem is because they tape several episodes in a row, sometimes you have episodes airing that were filmed before the last iPay-per-view, so that means you have 2 or 3 weeks where the next iPay-per-view doesn't get hyped.
Oh, wow.
I mean, where it used to, this kind of used to work in the old school system where you'd have a big show at, the Spectrum once a month, so people were kind of used to going to that. It doesn't work, though, when you have, when you're relying on people outside of the general area to buy the event.
Mm-hmm. Wow. It's crazy. But, yeah, I even hardcore Ring of Honor fans don't even seem to be that motivated about what's going on over there.
Yeah.
And the thing they did with Kevin Steen where he beat up the 2 plants, that was a cheap grab for attention.
Yeah. Well, my immediate thought was, okay, either this is a lawsuit and this guy is going to be going away forever, or it's going to be one of those things that's an attempt to turn him into a solid bad guy, but the fans are just going to cheer him anyway if they figure out it's a plant. Again,
that's where the internet kind of comes into play. It leaked the next day that it was a work. So
yeah, it's like, the idea. I even said this. Why would you even do that angle? It's not going to work because the ROH fans are not going. In ROH and Jim, and I'm going to sound like Vince Russo here, but with that audience, traditional heel and babyface lines don't work. The only guy I ever saw draw consistent heat in ROH was Jimmy Rave. Other than that, you almost have to work everyone as a tweener and just do your best and work it in a certain way. Jim Cornette wants to write traditional heel and baby faces. Well, it doesn't work with that audience.
No, it really. Well, they're the smart marks. They're just there to watch the spots, really.
Right. They try to make Kevin Steen, this big bad guy that's the embodiment of everything that's wrong with pro wrestling, and the fans are chanting, "Kill Steen, kill. Kill Steen, kill." That's not working. They tried to make the Briscoe brothers heels to make the World's Greatest Tag Team a babyface team, and people were still saying, man up, man up, man up. You know?
Yeah, well, it's hard to work guys that don't want to be worked.
Right. Well, I mean, I've always said this. You know, one guy that could probably draw heat in ROH would be the guy that would come in and say, you know what? I'm in ROH because it pays me the most money on the independent circuit, and it's the best chance to get spotted by WWE or TNA. Vince, Dixie, call me. That's the person that could get heat. Even that won't last very long.
Yeah, exactly.
The one guy that could probably get heat in ROH right now would be Kenny King.
Oh yeah, oh absolutely. Go send him back there. It would be like Kaz going back to ECW or Mike Awesome going back to ECW.
But you know what? People would probably still just chant "fuck TNA" instead. Because that seems to be the stops everything. Fuck TNA. Well, you know what, ROH? Your show sucks. Bound for Glory is going to be awesome. So fuck you.
Yeah, I think Ring of Honor needs to worry about themselves, to be perfectly honest, at the moment, because they're not generating much of a spark at all.
All right, well, Patrick, we should probably wrap this up. I got to go to work.
Okay, actually sounds good to me. So thank you, Nick, for staying on the line with me here. I don't know what happened to James, but that's all right. We can carry the show without him. Although, thank you to James Walsh for setting this up and setting up the interview with Scotty Riggs. I hope you all enjoyed that. And thank you all for listening. Thank you, Nick, for being with me here. And we will see you all next time we have an interview and a show for you. So until then, good night, everybody.